She texted her friends. He's so boring in bed. I'm basically doing charity work. I saw the message over her shoulder. Didn't say a word. Just forwarded it to her mom and her Sunday school group. But that wasn't the most embarrassing part. I, 32M, saw a text that changed everything. What happened next still amazes me. I was making coffee in our kitchen when she walked past me, phone in hand, completely absorbed in whatever conversation was happening on her screen. We'd been married for 4 years, and lately, things had felt distant. I'd chalked it up to work stress, maybe the natural ebb and flow of a relationship. I had no idea how wrong I was. The angle was perfect, or terrible, depending on how you look at it. As she stood next to me waiting for her toast to pop up, her phone was tilted just enough that I could see the group chat she was typing in. The message she'd just sent made my blood freeze. He's so boring in bed. I'm basically doing charity work at this point. The laughing emojis that followed felt like daggers. Her friends were responding with their own commentary about their husbands, but I couldn't focus on anything except those words echoing in my head. For years of marriage, and this was how she really felt. Not just that our intimacy had issues, that she saw being with me as charity work. I stood there, steam rising from my coffee mug, watching her casually scroll through the responses. She had no idea I'd seen it. No idea that in 10 seconds, she'd just shattered something that would never quite heal the same way. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt. Sometimes, it clarifies things with brutal precision. I didn't say anything. Didn't confront her. Didn't let my face show what I was feeling. I just sipped my coffee and told her I had some work emails to catch up on before heading to the office. She barely looked up from her phone as I left the kitchen. Sitting in my home office, I stared at her contact information. My thumb hovered over her mother's number, a woman who'd raised her daughter with strict religious values and still believed we were the perfect Christian couple. Then I scrolled to the group contact for her Sunday school class, where she served as a volunteer teacher for teenage girls. The screenshot was easy enough to take. I'd memorized exactly where that message appeared in the conversation. Getting it sent took me about 30 seconds total. Then I waited. The first call came from her mother 20 minutes later. I could hear her phone ringing in the kitchen, could hear my wife's confused voice as she answered. The conversation started polite but quickly escalated. I caught fragments through the walls, something about disappointment, about setting an example, about what the church community would think. The second wave hit when her Sunday school coordinator called. Apparently, several parents had already reached out with concerns about having someone who talked about their marriage in such crude terms working with their teenagers. The conversation was brief but decisive. By lunch, she was in tears. By dinner, she was furious. She cornered me in the living room that evening, her face blotchy from crying and anger. She wanted to know if I'd had anything to do with what happened. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She explained about the messages, about how someone had screenshot her private conversation and sent it to people who mattered in her life. I asked her what messages she was referring to. She couldn't bring herself to repeat what she'd written. Instead, she just said someone was trying to ruin her reputation, probably one of her friends playing a cruel joke. I suggested maybe she should be more careful about what she put in writing if she didn't want people to see it. She stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression, but she didn't pursue it further. Update 1. The real fallout began the next week. Her mother, who'd always doted on her only daughter, started treating our marriage like a crisis intervention project. Suddenly, we were being invited to dinner every Sunday, so she could monitor our spiritual health and offer unsolicited advice about communication in marriage. Her Sunday school position was officially terminated. The coordinator was diplomatic about it, citing scheduling conflicts, but everyone involved knew the real reason. She'd gone from being the golden child of our congregation to someone the other church wives whispered about in the parking lot. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected direction. Her sister called me directly on a Wednesday afternoon. They'd always been close, more like best friends than siblings. She told me she'd been thinking about the situation, about how those messages had gotten out, and she had some questions. Had I noticed my wife seemed different lately? More secretive with her phone, more critical of me in general? Because looking back, there had been signs that her sister had ignored, things that made more sense now in context. I told her I'd noticed some distance between us, but hadn't wanted to read too much into it. She asked if I thought my wife might be talking to someone else, someone who was making her compare our relationship unfavorably. I said I hoped that wasn't the case, but I was starting to wonder about a lot of things. She promised to keep an ear out and let me know if she heard anything concerning. 2 days later, she called back. My wife had been meeting someone for coffee. Someone she'd mentioned casually to her sister as just a friend from work, but the way she talked about him had raised red flags. The sister had done some casual Facebook stalking and discovered this friend was recently divorced, had been liking all of my wife's photos going back months, and according to his own posts, had been spending a lot of time at the same coffee shop where my wife claimed to be having girl time on Saturday mornings. That's when I realized the boring bedroom comment wasn't just about me being inadequate. It was about me being inadequate compared to someone else. Update 2. I started paying closer attention without making it obvious. Her Saturday morning coffee dates became more frequent. She started doing her hair and makeup with more care on those days. Her phone, which used to sit casually around the house, now went everywhere with her and was always face down. The confirmation came 3 weeks after the original incident. I was picking up dry cleaning when I saw them together through the window of the coffee shop across the street. She was leaning across the table, laughing at something he'd said, her hand covering his on the table between them. I sat in my car and watched them for 20 minutes. The body language told the whole story. The way she angled toward him, how he touched her arm when making a point, the fact that they sat on the same side of a booth instead of across from each other. When I got home, she was already there, humming while she cooked dinner. She asked about my day and told me about her morning with the girls, describing in detail a conversation about book recommendations that had definitely not happened in that coffee shop. That night, I started planning. The screenshot that had caused so much trouble was nothing compared to what I had access to now. Her laptop, which she rarely used anymore, was still logged into her social media accounts. Her browser history showed frequent visits to this man's profiles across multiple platforms. Her email contained confirmation of restaurant reservations for times when she'd told me she was elsewhere. But the real treasure trove was her phone backup on our shared computer. Messages going back 2 months painted a clear picture of an emotional affair that had recently become physical. The details were explicit enough to make me sick and incriminating enough to end our marriage immediately. I could have confronted her then, could have filed for divorce with evidence that would have made the proceedings straightforward. But she'd humiliated me publicly by reducing our marriage to charity work. I wanted to make sure the response was proportional. Update 3. Her birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. We'd already planned a party, nothing huge, just close family and friends at our house. Her parents, her sister, some cousins, a few friends from church, some coworkers. About 20 people total. I told her I'd handle all the planning as my gift to her. She seemed touched by the gesture, probably feeling guilty about what she'd been doing behind my back. The party setup was simple. I prepared a slideshow of photos from our relationship, our dating years, engagement, wedding, various trips and holidays. The kind of nostalgic presentation that's standard at these gatherings. I set it to play on our large TV in the living room. Time to start just as everyone was finishing dinner. But I'd made some creative additions to the slideshow. Scattered between the innocent photos were screenshots of her messages with him. Not the sexual ones. I'm not completely vindictive. But the ones where she talked about being bored in our marriage, where she planned lies to tell me about her whereabouts, where she discussed how much more exciting he was than her husband. The timing was perfect. People were relaxed, slightly buzzed from wine, gathered around the TV reminiscing about our relationship. The first few photos got the expected warm reactions, comments about how young we looked, how happy we seemed, how time had flown by. Then the first screenshot appeared. The room went quiet. I watched her face drain of color as she realized what was happening. She looked at me across the room, and I gave her the same innocent expression I'd worn that morning in the kitchen when I first saw her message. Her mother's voice cut through the silence, reading the message out loud in confusion, asking what this was supposed to be. Her sister stepped closer to the TV, then turned to stare at my wife with dawning understanding. The slideshow continued, each screenshot carefully chosen to reveal the full scope of what had been happening. Her coworker, who was at the party, recognized the name of the man she'd been messaging. Her cousins started whispering among themselves. Her father just stood there looking like someone had punched him. She tried to stop it, fumbling for the remote, but I'd hidden it earlier. She tried to unplug the TV, but the cord was behind our entertainment center. Finally, she just ran upstairs to our bedroom and slammed the door. The party ended quickly after that. People left with awkward goodbyes and promises to call later. Her family stayed behind, wanting answers I pretended not to have. I told them I'd found the messages recently and hadn't known how to handle it. I said I'd put them in the slideshow hoping she'd see how much our relationship meant to me and want to work things out. I acted as confused and hurt as they expected a betrayed husband to be. Her mother cried. Her father shook my hand and told me I deserved better. Her sister hugged me and apologized for not saying something sooner about her suspicions. When everyone finally left, I went upstairs. She was packing a suitcase, tears streaming down her face. She asked me how I could humiliate her like that in front of everyone who mattered to her. I told her I'd learned from an expert. She moved in with her sister that night. The divorce papers were filed a week later. Her affair partner, whose wife apparently saw our little slideshow when my wife's coworkers shared it at their office, was also facing some domestic consequences. The house feels quiet now, but it's a good quiet. The kind that comes after something toxic has been removed from your life. Her mother still calls me sometimes to check in, still treating me like the son-in-law who got wronged instead of the one who orchestrated a public humiliation. I don't feel bad about what I did. She made our private life a source of entertainment for her friends and turned our marriage into a joke. All I did was make sure the right audience got to see the punchline. Sometimes people ask if I think I went too far. I tell them that when someone treats your love like charity work, you eventually stop feeling charitable about how you respond. The most embarrassing part, she told her sister later, wasn't the screenshots or the party or even losing her Sunday school position. It was realizing that I'd known all along and had been planning this for weeks while she thought she was getting away with everything. She'd been so focused on her secret that she never considered I might have secrets of my own. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us. Please subscribe.